Greetings. Welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us. Paul Sandy Davis is an English singer, songwriter, musician, and producer. His career started as a member of prog rock band Gracious, who released two albums in the early 70s. While with Gracious, he also sang on the 1970 rock opera album, Jesus Christ Superstar. During the mid-70s, Mr. Davis released a couple of solo albums, and then a third in 1996. From 1975 to 1977, Sandy joined forces with Paul Travis, who would perform and release material under various guises, such as Panama Rags, Pacific Rock, and Rhubarb. After a time with prog band Headwaiter, Sandy relocated to Germany to perform live, write, and record. It wasn't long before Paul joined his songwriting friend there. Sandy moved back to the UK in 2012, where he now resides, and just last year released the album Singles and Masters. And my guest continues to write and record to this day. Well, welcome, Sandy.
Thanks, Greg. Nice to be here.
Thank you for taking time out to meet with me and visit with me today. Well, take us back to the beginning. Where were you born?
In Weybridge, which is in Surrey, South London, about approximately 60 miles southwest of London City, in the country.
Okay. Oh, pretty country there?
Yeah, I guess you could say I'm a country boy.
Okay, at heart. We'll talk about some fond childhood memories there.
Well, okay. Weybridge is where I went to school. I had what we call here a public school. That's a private school, let's put it that way. And that's a good education, but the interest in learning things, which is what you're taught when you go there to learn, sort of kind of drifted off around the A-level mark. I guess that must be 17 years old, 16, 17. And I just got interested in other things. I did make it. It's not that I didn't make it, but my interest in schooling and stuff just sort of drifted off around about that time. And I got interested in music, so I started playing the guitar.
Right. Well, take us back a few years, back to when you're younger. Do you remember music being played in the house?
Yes. I mean, to a certain extent, we weren't really a musical family as such. My dad was a civil engineer who wanted me to follow in his footsteps. I didn't, but he was very, very gracious about me wanting another career. And my mum, well, she was a nurse from Ireland, which came in handy when I didn't feel too well.
Yeah.
I had some family. Of course, I've got three sisters. Two sisters and one younger sister, so well, that makes three, yeah. But it wasn't really a music-dominated background. I just sort of fell into it. I guess I was like a lot of young guys, a big Beatles fan, and of course the Stones and the Kings were also great, the 60s music scene. And then there was the fashion, which didn't really sort of involve me too much, but the whole 60s era sort of kind of, grabbed me like it did many, many people.
Yeah. Do you remember one of your first singles or albums that you got?
Well, I guess that must have been the Beatles.
Okay.
So my first memory was sitting in the back room listening to Fab 208. I don't know if that means anything in America, but over here it was 1962, and it was a kind of like a Radio Caroline thing. It didn't pay its taxes, but it provided music for us young people, and I first heard this kind of Love Me Do, and I thought, wow, that's great. Who's this? And that's where it all started. I remember it distinctly.
Okay, all right.
They were great days, really.
Was the guitar the first instrument you learned to play?
I guess you could. You're asking questions now. I've got to get back in my memory, which is
Sorry.
fine. Carry on asking these questions. Yeah, it was the guitar. I think I had a little. We had a sort of piano, one of those old, sort of kind of more or less out of tune pianos that lots of families had, from the 50s and the 60s. So I plonked a bit around there, and realized what E major was, oh, I see, E minor. Oh, I get that. Yeah, just change a note. You got it, Sand. Yes, exactly. And that's basically how I sort of, thought this was interesting. How do you make a minor from a major, and vice versa, of course. And that's basically where the interest started. I would have been about, 62. I'll be about 12, 12, 30, something like that. And of course, that was the right age, wasn't it, when the Beatles came up, they kind of knocked everybody's socks off. So really, really great. Those are my earliest memories.
Did you spend long hours in like your bedroom practicing and that kind of thing?
Of course.
Yeah.
Sure, asking, the parents, asking mum and dad, could I, could they afford a guitar? Well, of course they could, but it sort of indicated which direction I may be going in. I didn't have any problems at all. They said, of course.
Yeah.
And I got, sort of a 5-string or a 6-string guitar that was pretty beaten up, for 20 quid or 20 pounds, in those days, that was quite a lot of money. And that's where it all started. We did have that piano, that out of tune piano. And I did discover, sort of kind of looking at the keyboard, what the difference was between that and why, oh, I see. And that's basically where it all started, discovering, how these instruments can produce sounds. The drums was, I suppose you could say, my very first, not professional instrument, but I did play in the school band with Alan Cowderoy, who we ended up in Gracious together, or formed Gracious together, I should say. And drums, well, nobody was playing drums, so we needed a drummer. And I was doing the singing anyway. So I kind of checked out whether I could do both. And I could to a certain extent, I mean, Phil Collins does it a whole bunch better, but I guess he overdubs, doesn't he, really? Or we used to. So yeah, that's I suppose that's also a noteworthy or a mention of a start there, really, with the drum kit. But I wouldn't play it at home because it's just too loud.
Yeah, that's what I was referring
So
to.
everybody
Yeah,
kind of
like,
going, I can't stop.
and
Why
you
am I that bad?
go stay outside or something. Yeah, yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
well, was Satan's Disciples your first band, or were you in a band before that?
No, Satan's Disciples was the very first band. We formed it at school with Alan Cowderoy and John Mathis, I think, and Peter Laws, who was kind of he was really up on guitars, And I kept asking, what's that? What are you doing? He said, oh, well, that's obvious. That's G major. Oh, really? It was like that. That was how the relationship was. And I just sort of, we didn't have a drummer. So I said, all right, well, I'll play drums. That's what I did. And we started, we did the sixth form review the first year. So I guess we must have been, I don't know, 15 or something at school. And went down a storm. We were playing, the obvious songs, a Beatles cover, Kinks cover, and all that kind of stuff. And we went down an absolute storm. And the next year we got invited back. And in the meantime, we discovered, feedback, when you put the microphone to the amplifier and the guitar's too loud. Ooh. So we did all that on the stage the next year and didn't go down well at all. I think one person clapped, So it was fun, really. Now we were 16 then, I guess, so it made a difference. And
Right.
It was a good story that, that actually did happen. I'm not making a joke. We went down a complete catastrophe the second year.
Well,
That's
you live and learn, right? Yeah, it's like what?
you certainly do that, when you're expecting a good reaction, when the curtains close, at the end of the song, da, 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 and the curtains close and you're expecting applause, which is what happened the first year. All you heard behind the curtains was, but the curtains opened again, because that's what the stage manager, young guy, same age as us, have been told to do. When they finish the last number, close the curtains and then open them again for the encore.
Yeah.
And nobody clapped. So it was a bit embarrassing. But you got to start somewhere.
Right. Well, in 1968, the band changed the name to Gracious.
Yes.
Probably a smart move at the time. Did you get any kind of negative feedback to your name being Satan's Disciples? Any kind of flack off of that?
No, not really. You couldn't really call it flack. There were a couple of kind of raised eyebrows, and really, but we kind of felt, well, me and Alan, and we'd met this keyboard player who lived, not far from us in Walton, and we kind of decided that Satan's Disciples was not very sort of commercial. Today, of course, lots of things go, perhaps the weirder, the better. Don't know, not questioning that one, but we decided to change the name, but nobody could decide to what, because there were all these bands, I think Mock the Hoople, and there are lots of kind of, different named bands. And somebody came up with the name Gracious, and I thought, well, it's a bit polite, isn't it? Anyway, it stuck, and that's what we decided. Well, what's a name, and when you get well known, then people accept the name, which is true.
Yeah, well, maybe it was like you mentioned earlier, your dad being gracious about maybe it was a nod back to your dad.
It's possible. It's possible, but you get used to these things, Tony, and we had some good times, I have to say, supporting King Crimson. Happened to be one of them.
Yeah. Well, go ahead and talk about that, or did you want to talk about the support slot on the Who tour in '68?
Well, we were very, very, let's talk about the Who first. We were very, well, young, 18, 19 years old or whatever, and we're just learning to play in front of an audience in a professional manner, so we were basically doing covers, of I can't remember, some Tamla Motown hits. I'll remember the titles in a bit. Some Tamla Motown hits, and we supported the Who. Went down accordingly. Obviously a band of our inexperience, let's put it that way, we're never going to upstage the Who, who'd already had massive hits with, what was that big hit they had? They broke through with it anyway. And I remember at one of our local big dances, we used to call them dances in those days, the Who were doing the top line. You could get into it. It was 1965. You could actually get near the stage, not like nowadays. And it was all very polite. And I remember being totally impressed with them. They were great. With him, Roger Daltrey doing all that with the microphone. Wow, oh, that's cool. But I don't think I'll try that. Not from the drums anyway. I might cause some problems with the back of their heads of our bass player, Yeah, that one. But there is one story, just while we're on that. I recall we were doing lots of universities and American air bases. We were doing those as well, with replete with Mr. Band, carry on, please. We weren't having a small pause of 10 minutes. We want Mr. Band. So we played, we made our experiences, and it toughens you up, it does. And we got this gig at Southampton University with supporting King Crimson, and that would have been 68, I think, or maybe 69, I'm not sure. But round about then, and we'd done our gig, and thought it was, oh, we've really played well. I think so. Yeah, we all loved your bass line, so all that kind of chat. And then King Crimson came on, so because there weren't many people there, 30, 40 people, that was it. And then King Crimson came on, sort of humming a bit. Black, stage was black. And they started with this theme from Mars, it's in 5/4, dem 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 dem, and we thought, oh, I wonder what this is. And then all of a sudden the lights came on. Anyway, cut a long story short, they blew us away. I mean, I'd never seen anything like that. I thought, geez. So we immediately went. Next rehearsal was in the following week. We quit all playing all our sort of covers, Heat Wave and Tamla Motown or whatever, and decided to do our own stuff. King Crimson were responsible for us writing our own original material.
Okay.
That's how it
happened. What caught my eye when I was reading the background on this was you performed with King Crimson on my birthday. So I said, oh, there's kind of omen or connection there. July 11th was is my birthday, was and is, and then that's when you guys played. So I thought, oh, there's something cosmic there, right?
Yeah.
So what was it? Was it also the Mellotron? Did that kind of change everything for you guys?
It did. I mean, we kind of copied a little bit of the Moody Blues line up of the instrumentation, because I think they were the first to have a Mellotron, but they didn't impress us as much as King Crimson. They blew us away. And, I think the reasons are clear for me as a musician anyway, that the Moody Blues had commercial success and it was justified and well earned, but King Crimson had a musicality that wasn't so commercial as the Moody Blues, but they blew you away when you saw them. When in the early days, it was all black, and then they came on with this astoundingly loud music from nowhere. All the lights flashing, and in those days, of course, you could put the strobe lighting into the audience. You're not allowed to do that anymore because strobe lighting, has an effect on you. But in those days, Hawkwind, I think, was another band that did that, and so completely blown away. I thought, wow, that's something, and that, like I said, I'm repeating myself, that's where our change of direction came. Brilliant.
Well, how did Nori Paramore become interested in the band?
Well, it was a little bit before that. It's good that you mentioned it, because we had we changed our name to Gracious. I think I'm not quite sure. You're asking me questions now. Going back, and that's fine. We worked with Tim Rice, or should I say Sir Tim. Who's a really nice bloke. He really is. I messaged him a couple of weeks back. So, we still sort of remember those days. And Nori Paramore, who was Cliff Richard's a producer, and Tim was working for Nori Paramore in those days. He suggested recording some of our original Gracious songs. We did write, not just kind of pieces as King Crimson would describe their music. We did actually write some kind of singles, Life is on a Movie and Beautiful and other sort of short songs. But that wasn't what really kind of, changed our attitude. It was King Crimson and their longish pieces, which we thought was fabulous. So we changed from that. But Nori Paramore and Tim Rice did record Finance and Tim recorded us in London in studios for some singles, which, well, you know how it is in the music business. Some make it, some don't, you know. Yeah, good old days.
Yeah. Well, moving ahead a little bit, how was touring Germany in 1969?
Yeah, that was great. We did lots of gigs. I think one I remember was the Zoom Club in Frankfurt, where Mott the Hoople, Ian Hunter, we were supporting, or we were playing the day after. I'm not quite sure, but I think we were supporting them on that evening in this Zoom Club in Frankfurt, Germany. And it was great. The Germans were really, really nice people. You know, well, they still are, you know.
They were.
Great audience.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, we did, obviously, we did Hamburg. You know, you can't tour Germany without sort of saying, we played Hamburg. I think it was can't remember exactly, but they've got a kind of sex mile, you know, the Reeperbahn, that's it. Perfectly, you know, perfectly okay, no kind of, you know, nothing out of order. You knew where you were and you knew what you were doing. We did the Keller Club, I think it was called, where the Beatles played 8 or 9 years earlier.
Right.
I think it was the Keller Club, I'm not quite sure. One of those anyway. And we got, well, the experience we had was you couldn't pay for that. You know, you're there, you're doing whatever they say you do. You know, that's you start playing at, I don't know, 9 o'clock, 9 to 10, 11 to 12. You know, but it was an amazing experience, and we had a wonderful time. We got along great, and you get to know you get to know each other a little bit more under those circumstances. And then that was a really, really good time.
Yeah, you got to hone your chops a little bit too.
Exactly.
Yeah, get that under your cover. Well, do you recall how you got the record deal with Vertigo? Do you recall?
I got the record deal with Vertigo. Well, we'd made, you know, demos. You have to had to do that in those days, and you still have to do them today. So I think, although people could come and see you play, and that's maybe a little bit different. But we had some demos, and it wasn't Tim Rice. It was Hugh. Hugh, we always used to call him Huge. Just a joke, yes. He produced Jerry Rafferty.
Okay.
So Hugh, anyway, he was a really nice bloke. And he'd heard us and he approached us and said, look, do you guys have a deal? And we were being managed by somebody, you know, one of those kind of, you know, managers. Well, anyway, I won't get into that. And he introduced us to Hugh, not Hugh Hefner, obviously. I can't remember his last name, but a really cool guy. And he was the one that negotiated the deal with Vertigo,
Okay.
which was a kind of an off, it was a spin-off from Philips, I think, or which was a big company, and they were doing sort of, you know, progressive rock bands, and that's how that happened.
Was it Hugh Murphy? Hugh Murphy?
Exactly right, Hugh Murphy. That's it.
All right, just to look that up real quick. Okay, good deal. Well, do you have any memories of recording the first Gracious album?
I do, and I don't. You know, it's one of those things that sort of is a bit sort of gets lost in the mist of time and experience and so on. But I do recall I was asked, well, yeah, I was being the singer, we'd got a drummer in by then, you know, Robert Lipson, who I'm still in contact with him today. And I couldn't reach the notes, you know, it was supposed to be you're kind of mimicking somebody else, or you're influenced by somebody else. And one of these songs had a very high note, but it needed to be sung in a certain way. So Hugh put me in the studio and told me to stand on the table, and then he trusted the microphone. So it's all psychological, You don't get any higher, you stand on the table. But anyway, that's what he did. And I did make the note, oddly enough. I realized what he'd done. But that was one of the memories that stands out from those sessions. Pretty much, I think, not sort of like clockwork, but Hugh did everything in a specific way, So if you weren't sort of singing on that day, you didn't need to come sort of, we all came, of course, but there wasn't really an awful lot of, stories that I can remember anyway, about those days. And we did have a good time there.
Okay, well, that's important,
Yes.
Yeah. Well, my favorite track off the album is Heaven. I love the keyboard and the mellotron in the intro. And you start to think, is this just going to be an instrumental? But then the vocals, kick in, and I love that. Do you have a clean mind?
Yes.
Yeah, I love it.
Do you have a clean mind?
Yeah.
Yes, that sticks in my mind. So we were very, of course, me and Martin Kitcat very close, and I was obviously still very firmly a Beatles fan, or I should put it in another way, a melody fan. I loved melody, so it could be done by anybody. But that's what we're trying to do with our recordings, for gracious, put melody in there. Not that others, of contemporary, other contemporaries didn't have melody, but we tried to make our songs, and Heaven and Hell, of course, is the idea for heaven was then it was opposite to hell, so that had to be in there. I remember us rehearsing, which was a great deal of fun. All our girlfriends around, and everybody giggling and the usual. It was just great fun, really. And then playing that on stage, we did quite a lot of marquee gigs in Wardour Street in Soho in the early, late 60s, early 70s. That's in the program there. And we had a terrific time, I must say. Really, really great.
You went down well with the audiences and everything.
Yes, we did. I have to say, you had to talk to the audience. You couldn't just sort of, but a lot of people, well, that's kind of how it is, I guess. You tend to sort of come across as being an introvert. That's only nerves. So you don't do too much talking, but we did, we just sort of told a few jokes, and I won't tell you a joke, but just quick one-liners, and that went down very well. We had a nice little following at what Marquee Club. Yeah, that was good.
Oh yeah, the Marquee. I've heard different artists that had residencies there, and that was the place to play.
Yeah, I think I've got them somewhere. It's on the internet, Marquee Club London, and I think it's 1970. We were featured quite a lot. Like I was saying, you tell the audience a joke, like, did you hear the one about the musician that walked past a pub? That's the joke, Oh, well, I get it. And we built up a sort of nice, kind of rapport. Good time.
I like the one I remember. I used to watch Benny Hill,
Oh.
and I like the one where he says he was talking about I don't drink anymore. I'm not an alcoholic, and he said there are so many hundreds of pubs in this town, and I have not been in one of them. And then his wife says, "Which one is that?"
Yes.
That always sticks with me. Well, how did you come into the Jesus Christ Superstar thing? Did you audition for the part of Peter, or how did that come about?
Right, Jesus Christ Superstar. Okay, Andrew, what was the name?
Andrew Lloyd Webber.
That's the one. That's it, Sir or Lord Webber now. Yeah, he approached me, or you get a kind of an invitation down the line. He wasn't up there at the time, but I think that was over Tim Rice there, because Tim and Andrew they worked together. Tim doing the lyrics and Andrew doing the music, and I think Tim introduced me there, and I became then St. Peter. It wasn't a big part, but it was a part that I played very gladly. And yeah, on the original recording though. The other recordings, I don't know why they got somebody else to do it, but I guess that's the reason, for all these things. But on the original recording, I'm there with my long hair, looking.
Did you did you did you enjoy taking part in that?
Sure, I did very much.
Well,
Yeah.
what's interesting when I'm doing these interviews is the connections that I find. Just tomorrow, I'm talking with a Canadian singer. You're probably not familiar with her, Kathy Young, kind of a folk singer. She was part of the musical for Jesus Christ Superstar.
Uh-huh.
She played Mary Magdalene, or sang Mary Magdalene's part, in that. So I thought this is very interesting. The day after,
Yeah.
but I find these kind of connections and these kind of threads, throughout these
I'm
doing
looking
these.
like I am listening to you. I'm just looking for the original.
That's all right.
Yeah, I do have it, but I can't find it at the moment. It's difficult, isn't it? Oh, I've got it. Would you believe it?
Oh, right. All right.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm looking to see what's on the inside cover. Oh, these just basically lyrics. Anyway, I don't recall her name, but because in those days, and often, it's the way you just come in, sing your part, and then you're off,
Right. Well, there were so many productions, and hers was the musical, I guess, and then yours was on the album. So
That's
yeah,
right. Yes.
it's a different kind of a thing. But yeah, I just thought, wow, this name's come up a couple of times. Maybe I need to go confess my sins or something now. I don't know. No, but anyway, moving on from that, the second album, This Is Gracious, and you had a couple of exclamation points this time, right? One on the first album, and then you had
Yes.
the other two. Was there any who was behind that, putting the exclamation point?
Well, I can't say. I don't really remember,
Yeah.
but I know that the second album was Vertigo were not so keen, to finance the second album. But they weren't forced to do it, of course, but they were persuaded by the powers that be, Hugh Murphy, and I think Tim Rice might have been somewhere in the background there. And personally, I think the second LP is better than the first, although both have their magic, Um, but that's how the second album sort of kind of took place. It was very, very hard to make these kind of recordings unless you were doing super well on the live circuit. And we had a lot of problems getting gigs. Like loads of bands went under, went down, broke up, because they just couldn't get the gigs, It hasn't really changed. People, on up there, they want to make money, and if they think, well, maybe not. But that's how that LP happened. He, whoever it was, I think it was probably Hugh Murphy, said, "Oh, we've got to make a second LP." The first one was I prefer that. Actually, I'm not sure which LP I prefer. As the first one's got its magic, it's very not rough at the corners, but it's not totally smooth, and I like that. It's kind of, it's honest, and it's open, and it's there. And the second LP I also really like, but that was a bit more, well, harder to make, I think. Putting
especially especially the 25-minute magnum opus Supernova. you know,
Yes.
that's got to be a monster. The
Yes,
you remember recording doing
I
that?
do. Yeah, we did it in bits. There'll be loads of edits, of course. We'll do the bit. This bit, right? We'll get that right. Then we'll do the next bit. We'll edit it later. Because that's how you do it in the studio. You don't do that live, of course, but you do it in the studio because to get all the levels right, you have to.
Yeah, yeah,
And if you're inviting other musicians to play different instruments, saxophone maybe, or whatever, they can't always be there and won't always be there for the whole thing. There's loads of reasons why, it's done in bits. But I do recall having good feelings about that LP.
yeah. How about
Uh,
how about playing Supernova live? Any memories? Did you do shortened version, or was it the full version?
I don't have any memories of that. I don't. I do recall that we did play Supernova. We auditioned it, if you like, at the Marquee Club, and it seemed to go down really well. Um,
So Vertigo did not release the second album, but eventually Philips International did release it. Thank goodness. But that was after the band had broken up.
yeah, it was around that time. The exact dates I don't recall, but something along those lines rings a few bells in my head.
Yeah,
So it's a pity, but hey,
at
hey,
least we have it for posterity's sake, as they say. We do
yeah.
have it. Well, after the breakup, you began using Sandy instead of Paul, and I take it that was to differentiate yourself from the American singer Paul Davis, right?
Exactly right.
Okay, all right, yeah. Um, I
I
like
mean,
it. Yeah,
today it wouldn't make much difference. In fact, you could probably make a profit from it. But at that time, anyway, however and whatever, there was an artist in America that was having success, and I thought, well, it's better to use Sandy. It was a nickname I got when I was learning to play the drums at 14 or 15. And somebody, around at a friend's house, it's normal. And somebody said, "Oh, look, it's It's Sandy Davis from Sandy Nelson. No?
right.
It's Sandy Davis," and that's how it turned out to be Sandy Davis. I thought was quite a nice nickname. So we use that. That's how that happened. Yeah.
To be. Well, yeah, I want to say that I don't know how your solo material flew under my radar all these years, but I have to confess, I only knew you from Gracious, you know. But I think your voice and your songwriting talent lent more to was more suited for pop music. That's just my 2 cents. Um,
I agree with you.
yeah, and I think that you did real well on both of those albums. When going back and listening to them, or first time, doing research for this. Inside Every Fat Man, your first from '74. I wanted to. This is what I normally do. I mention a few songs, and then get your take or perhaps the background on the song, if you would.
Of course.
Uh, okay, we can see. Um, I Got Friends. Um, Reminds me of the later song by Andrew Gold. Thank you for being a friend.
Yeah,
Okay,
it has this. Yeah, it's got a similar sort of kind of
yeah,
friendly attack to it. You
yes,
know.
yes, yes, yes. And I'm not saying he borrowed anything from you because he wrote that later, but but it is similar. It is similar.
Yes, Chris
Um,
Squires from Yes, I think played bass on that.
I think so. I think I did read that. You're right. You're right. Um, well, another track, "Show a Little Love." I think that's a gorgeous song. Um, and I can't help but hear the echoes of the Beatles in that one.
Yeah, you know, I am what I am, who I am, and the Beatles were there to push me. You know, I'm very proud to be today even a Beatles fan. I don't, you know, obviously, uh, but you know, they influenced loads of people, me included.
Yeah,
And I love that song. I didn't rip it off from Let It Be because Let It Be had, you know, okay. It just came to me, you know, when I was sort of fumbling around with the pianos. Loads of songwriters do this, you know, fumbling. Oh, that sounds good. I'll keep that bit in. What about this? Nah, yeah, that's it. You know, that's how it sort of happens, you know. And then, of course, when you've got a structure, as was, you know, with this song, then the words come later, you know, and you repeat and you refine and all that sort of stuff. But it was the original. I remember playing it on the piano, thinking, "Oh, this is good," you know, because I wanted to say something political. You
right.
don't get really a chance, you know, as a pop singer. And you're quite right. You know, my influences have always really been in the pop scene. You don't really get a chance to sort of send much politically. Well, you didn't at the time. Maybe you do today, but and I just wanted to, you know, to illustrate that there were loads of children, you know, starving, you know, and we're okay here. It's still had nothing's changed. I was looking at the news last night. It's just the same. It's Sudan and Africa, and you know, these poor little children with their big eyes and their big bellies, you know, for lack of food. It's enough to make you cry. So you know, but that's you know that's life, I guess.
Right.
That's the nasty part of life.
Yes, it is. And not to those extremes, but here in America, we have starving people, and
Yes.
uh, I'm sure there as well, you know, really struggling. So, yeah, the disparity in income has always been a problem. It seems like it's getting worse and worse. But we won't go real political on this.
No, but I'd quite like just quickly to know
Yeah,
your feelings on the you know is Biden doing anything for the poor people over there?
not to speak of. No,
Okay,
not particularly. No.
all right.
Yeah. Same old story, pretty much. Um,
Anyway,
yeah, yeah. I'll say this too. The last two presidents have been the oldest presidents. So the next one we get, is he going to be 90 years old? You know, I don't know.
you
It's,
think they would have learned it by now, wouldn't you?
yeah, you would
But
think.
I guess probably you can edit whatever
Yeah,
you want out, but probably it's like you know they're not too old to not to know, but it's like they've been down this street before and this doesn't work, you know, in your society over there for
right.
this, that, and the other reasons. It doesn't matter what they do, they're stifled, you know, there, and there. And it brings water to your eyes, you know, when you see that on the news about people, you know, especially in America, which is a horrifically rich land, you know, the
Right.
richest perhaps on earth, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
But when you look at again, you know, 10% of the population hold 90% of the wealth. I mean, that's
yes,
a big problem, you know.
yes.
And nobody wants to do anything about that. So yeah, we could make this whole go in a whole socio-political slant on this. Um, you know, well, going back to
Yeah.
your first album, Snuggle Up. That's another one I think McCartney wishes he wrote that song. I think if he's heard that song, I think he secretly wishes he wrote that.
I remember writing it. It was I was living at home still. And I remember writing that up in my attic music studio bedroom, the usual, surrounded by tape recorders and, duvets and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and I thought, well, I want to make something. I want to make a point. I just like to write a love song, and I thought Snuggle Up. It just turned up. I thought, well, can I write here? And I always really liked that song. I remember an Andrew Jackman who did the arrangement. He really liked it as well. So I went round to his place quite a lot before we recorded. You've got to get the arrangements together, what instruments, and there's oboe in there, and lots of beautiful stuff that I really like. And that was a song that I wrote at that time as a demo. Just on the guitar and my two little Fostex tape recorders. You record on one, put it onto the second one and add. That's the usual. So yeah, it's a lovely song. That was really, really one of my favorites.
Well, you mentioned one of my favorite instruments, the oboe. I just love the sound of the oboe.
Yeah,
It's so melancholy, but it's so beautiful.
so atmospheric, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it is. Very much so. Very much so. Well, one more track from that album. A different influence I hear on this one, but not too different. My Favorite Lady reminds me of something Gilbert O'Sullivan might have done.
Yeah, I wrote it about my cat. I think I might have mentioned that on the album cover. I'm not sure, or on the sleeve somewhere. But I wrote it about my cat. She was my favorite lady, and it just came out the way that it did, with a very sort of kind of commercial beat or a commercial sounding, and that's where the orchestration came in for that particular song. Because there are some orchestral instruments on that. I can't recall them straight away, but one of my favorite songs as well. My Favorite Lady. My Favorite Lady. It's my cat.
Speaking of,
Well, just
not the same cat.
look, here it is.
Oh, hello.
This
Yeah.
This is Ollie.
Hi, Ollie.
Short for Oliver. Because when he was outside, we brought him in. He was outside meowing and didn't have anything to eat. So, like Oliver Twist, we gave him something. He roared off. Next day, he was back. Happened 2 or 3 times, and I said to my sister who I live with, I said, "Shall we adopt him? He's always here anyway, Yeah, come on then." So did the usual.
Well, I lied. There's one more track I wanted to mention. The last of my goodbyes. Yeah, that's a great track.
That's on the second LP, isn't it?
I don't think so. Maybe I'm wrong here. I thought it was maybe it was an extra track. Let's see.
Well,
look, pull out. Do you have it? Your first.
I've got inside of the fat.
Yeah, maybe I inserted this in the wrong place.
Oops. No, you're right. It's on the first one. The last of my goodbyes. Yeah. Yeah, it was a kind of disguised sort of kind of suicide song. I hate to say that, there was nothing else. I didn't actually feel that, but you make these things up, read something in the paper or whatever it happened to be, and the lyrics then just popped out. This will be the last of my goodbyes, but it was also one of my favorites. I like the melody.
Yes, I do.
And yeah, that's really where I've always been at. melody kind of person, and I really like that song too. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're yeah, melody, I mean, throughout all of these songs, again, that's the common theme. Uh, moving on to Back on My Feet Again from 75 the next year. Baby I Do. Let's say there's that Beatles influence again. This time I'm thinking maybe George Harrison with the guitar and the voice fluctuations a little bit.
Well, Back on My Feet Again all started just out of interest. I was hammocking in my hammock. Can't make that into a verb. I was outside in the summer, and the telephone rang, and it was a producer saying, "We're going into the studio to produce a second LP in 2 or 3 weeks or something." And I went, "What?" That's the first I heard of it. Well, didn't anybody say? No, I didn't know. So I thought, blimey, I better get writing, So, so I wrote a whole bunch of songs. And yeah, that's how that started, Back on My Feet Again. And we did one track called Only Love Can Last Forever.
Yes.
Which yeah, I really, really liked. We did that as a single.
Okay.
And we
Okay.
used the Average White Band.
Okay.
Because our producer Maya Shagaloff, or what his real name was, Jeff Haslam, I think. He'd made a deal with them or something, said, "Well, we're going to record this. Can you do the backing track? Obviously, you'll be paid, And so they did the backing track for that. And that was the first track that we recorded for this LP. And let's put it this way, it was on a Wednesday we did the backing track, and then the Average White Band moved to California, Los Angeles, to start their American tour, where they was just starting to get right up to the top, when they attended this party on the weekend there, and Robbie Robertson, I think was the name of the drummer, he overdosed. And we're all really, really sad, because we booked them for the rest of the LP. And because they're such a good band, really great. And that was his last, his last recording, actually. Only Love Can Last Forever. I was really, really happy with the track, but so sad about the news that he died,
Yeah.
But yeah, what can you say? Anyway, we finished off that, and that became a sort of kind of dipstick for the rest of the LP, as it were,
Okay.
And Back on My Feet Again. Then, that's right, Jeff Haslam found this London band who still exist called Gonzales.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
There are a bunch of musicians in London town, or were, I think they're still going, called Gonzales, and they had a keyboard player who did Back on My Feet Again. We did all them all, but that track you wanted to start off with, the second one in, he did some fantastic keyboard on that. But the band played really well. There was the bass player. I'll have to get back into my memory for all the people that played on that. But what a wonderful experience. And the first track, Steve Ferroni, that went on to be with Eric Clapton. That was I think it was one of his last London gigs, and he was a musician. These are all, really, really well, really great studio musicians. And Steve Ferroni said, "Oh, bloody hell, do you know what time it is?" And we're still on, take 370 or whatever. I said, "I don't know what time, my watch is downstairs." He said, "It's 5 o'clock in the morning. We've been at this since eight, last night." I said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." So I think it was the next take after that. We said, "Right, that's it. That's the one we're keeping," And it was just a fun LP, really. It was fun to make.
Yeah. I don't guess Hugh Murphy had anything to do with. Did he have anything to do with this album, or was he? No. Okay.
No, he didn't.
The reason I is that Jerry Rafferty connection. Step in the Right Direction, I hear a little Jerry Rafferty. And in a few of the other tracks, I hear a little bit of the influence, that Jerry Rafferty.
Uh-huh. Well, it could be. I'm not sure when Jerry Rafferty had his big hit, the one that broke through Baker Street.
Yeah, it was around that time. I think it was the mid-70s, mid to late 70s. Yeah.
Okay.
Who Knows is a gorgeous song. Who Knows?
Oh yeah, I like that one as well. That's typical me.
Yes, it is. Yes, I would say so.
Who knows what the future will bring and what tomorrow may bring, or something like that. Yeah. I don't care. Can't remember all the lyrics, but yeah, I really enjoyed that song, and that'll be me on the piano, fumbling along there. We did have some great musicians, really, and Trevor Vallis, the producer or the engineer, he was engineer up until a specific point, because Jeff Haslam just said, "Okay, boys, I'll see you Monday," and we never saw him again.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. He just, I don't know what happened to him. If you go on to Maya Shagaloff or Jeff Haslam on Discogs or one of these informational music, places on the internet, he does pop up quite often, and we always got along great, but he just disappeared. So me and Trevor Vallis, who was the engineer, really talented, we finished it off together. So produced by, Maya Shagaloff and Sandy Davis is not a lie. He just wasn't there, so we polished it all off together, me and the engineer.
Well, it sounds like you didn't lose a step in doing that.
Well, and I have to compliment, the engineer, my friend. He was brilliant, because he knew where all the settings were, and that plays a role, when you've got Billy, I think it was Billy Hopkins, I'm not quite sure, really fantastic keyboard player. And there was another one, or maybe it was on the first LP. My memory is not as good as it was, but on the second, we did have Ray Davis, I think his name was. Just a brilliant keyboard player, just really brilliant. Always had, we won't mention it, but hanging out of his mouth, "Oh, everything all right here? Good. Oh, all right, mate. I've got it. 6, 4," and then you play into it, and you go, "Wow, was that real? Was he playing that?" Yes, he was. And that's what he did with Step in the Right Direction, for example.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Well, most of your songs are ballads, but Sweet Little Rock and Roller, I like that one. I prefer the slower, more melodic, but that one rocks out. It really does. I like that. It's a really tight song.
Yeah, it is. That one just sort of got recorded. There's not a lot of history to it, but I think probably Trevor Vallis, the engineer, said, "Hey, Sand, we need something a bit up-tempo. Can you write that?" So I thought about it, said, "Yeah, okay." And came back on Monday with a rough demo. You know how it is, you play it. So, "Oh, that'll do. What key is it in?" It's in G, I think, or whatever. Good, okay, write down the chords and whatever, we'll take it. That's, I think, how that happened.
Okay. Well, moving up to, how did you and Paul Travis start working together?
Well, we started by accident. When I moved out into my first apartment from home, he was living in the apartment next to mine, and we met, not as you would imagine, sort of, in the street. We met sort of checking each other out through the kitchen window, because he was doing the washing up at the same time I was. It was something, could you do your own washing up? I mean, hello. And he grinned at me, and I grinned at him. He obviously checked me out, and I checked him out. What do you do? I'm a musician. Oh, brilliant. What do you play? Well, and so on and so forth. And then we just got together, and I thought his style was great. You know, Paul is passed on, unfortunately, 2 years back. But what a great musician! What a good head. You know, he had a mentality which complemented mine. You know,
That you guys work well together. You can, yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah. We really liked each other. You know.
Well, why did you decide to release under various pseudonyms instead of your own name?
Easy to explain. Trevor Vallis would be the engineer, and he would, because you do, you know, in those days we got obviously a small advance against the sales of the LPs or singles, and that had run its course. So it would have been around about, I suppose 76, 77, somewhere around there. That Paul and I, we wanted to produce more singles and work together. So Trevor offered us free studio time, which was really cool. But he'd call up on like a Friday night or a Sunday night even, you know, at 9:30 in the evening, and say, "Hey, I've got the studio tomorrow morning. The artist or whoever has paid for it's ready. The company has paid for it, so it's all free. Want to come up? Yeah, right." So we went up and recorded through the night, and we're looking for a deal, you know, and we needed a name, Panama Rags or whatever, you know, just to get a single out on the market, you know. And that's how that happened.
Okay, I got you. Well, you did release a few singles, Panama Rag and also Pacific Rock.
Pacific.
Yeah, the one that drew my attention was Rhubarb, and the album that you guys put out based on the children's TV show.
Yep. That's
Yeah,
exactly right. It was in fad or in fashion. Still is to a certain extent, but I wouldn't say these days in much more. The BBC would run, would have a 6 o'clock news, which they still do, and just before that, they used to run a sort of kind of a little cartoon. It could be the Hedgehogs or Bill and Ben, the Flower Pot Men, lasting about 5 minutes, something like that. And then after that, you go straight into the news because there's no advertising on BBC. It still isn't. And we just got a call from the animator of Rhubarb and Custard, which we really both liked. You know, obviously Rhubarb was he the guy that always got the custard pie, or was it Custard? I'm not quite sure. One of them ended up with the custard pie. It's normal, you know. And there were these, it just needed an LP. So it came down the line, you know, would you be interested in doing an LP? So we said, yeah, we would do that. But the trouble was money. Who's going to pay for it? So Trevor said, well, I'll tell you what, you do all the instruments, and we'll get, anybody in that you can't play. If it was a piano part that needed, we'll find the money for that, but that's okay. That's £15 an hour musicians union, in those days. Not a whole bunch of money, but that's how it was. And we just wrote it. We wrote it and played all the instruments, sang all the your harmonies. And I remember one track, we didn't have a drummer, and I can play the drums a bit, I'm being modest, but I'm not a very good drummer, but I keep the beat. And we didn't have any drums, so I just tapped the microphone, dim, 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 dim. For 4 minutes, Trevor said, I've got it, great sound. And that's how we built it up. We just played the guitars to it, and then Trevor would play some bass, and that's not how all the tracks were done, but mostly.
Yeah. Well, I like the album. I honestly do.
It's got a charm, isn't it?
Yeah, it is charming, and anyone that listens to it, I can't see them not liking it. I liked all the little sound effects that were added.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All the little birds, they were us, of
yeah,
course, singing and sped up, you know.
right,
We're about to start.
right,
Had a lot
right.
of fun doing that.
But the song material, I mean, it's quite good. Rhubarb's a Star, very catchy. I really, that's one of my favorites on there. Uh, Hey Miss Moonlight is a nice ballad.
Yeah, that's another one, isn't it? That really sort of
Yeah,
pops out. I really like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. And then I like, is that you doing the French accent, Monsieur Rhubarb? Okay.
That's Je suis Monsieur Rhubarb. And then it would go in do do do. Yeah. Oh no, just some good great harmonies there.
And then Super Rube, and maybe it's the guitar, but it reminds me a little of what 10cc might have done.
Yeah, what it was in those days, wasn't it? Sort of in the early mid 70s.
Yeah,
And yeah, you did what turned you on, and also you can't get away from your influences. So there were one or two things we hoped weren't rip-offs. But there's one track near right at the end of Rhubarb that I really like.
I think it may be my favorite. I think it may be my favorite. Is it "Go to Sleep, My Teddy Bear"?
No, I think it's the one before that.
Okay.
Title. Because we ran out of songs. That's why I'm Go to Sleep, My Teddy Bear. We put that on. I don't think we wrote that one, but it was a whole bunch of fun. I mean, doing that LP was something different.
Yeah.
We could write all the songs and do all the harmonies, just do it our way.
Yeah.
Cool.
I had a thought. I think if many of the songs they might have made it in a more popular music arena if the lyrics were changed for a more adult audience. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Because the songs are great, and maybe if they weren't lyrically, children's, I think that it might have really taken off.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to have somebody do that, but it's quite difficult these days. So I'm coughing a bit, but quite difficult these days because just about everybody writes their own stuff. But I would really like that if somebody came up and said, "Hey, would you mind us or me using your tune? Could we reach a deal and I'll put different words to it or whatever, make some adjustments." I mean, it wouldn't even bother me if it was rap, you know. I would say, yeah, sure, you go right ahead.
Well, anybody listening to this, go back and listen to the Rhubarb
Yes, please.
album, and if you're interested or know anybody, yeah, get in contact with Sandy.
Rhubarb and custard, that's the one.
That's the one. There you go. Well, how did you become involved with Headwaiter? Headwaiter, and how long were you with them?
Well, I got involved with Headwaiter because the drummer, Doug Ferguson, had left the band Camel, who were doing quite well. Andy Latimer was a great guitarist. I think he's still hanging around somewhere. If you see him, say hi. Yeah, Doug Ferguson wanted to start a new band, and he was kind of auditioning, if that's the right word to use in this case. People, I think it was more of a kind of attitude thing than a necessarily a talent, music talent. But anyway, it fitted in what I offered, and they offered me, would you like to join the band? And I had nothing else. I won't say nothing better to do, but I thought it was quite a good idea. Quite like to do this, and we did have some fun, but it didn't last too long. It was a pity because we were sort of gaining a reputation. We did quite a few gigs in London, and people were talking about us, which is what should happen. and the gig scene was getting a little bit more, sort of open, bit more flexible. You could, you know, wind your way and find your way, to various places which perhaps wouldn't have worked in the past years. And I had a really good time. I really enjoyed it. We were just having fun, which is basically half of what it all is, really, isn't it?
Right. You're right. I think so. Well, after this, you moved to Germany in what, 1980?
I did.
Reason or reasons?
Well, I had an offer to play some gigs, and I thought, well, why not? I was sitting back home where I've been living, at my own place, and uh, my parents had moved to Sheffield, south of Sheffield, which is where I'm living now, a very sort of quiet place. And I thought, well, this will do me good, So I went up to Sheffield, and I was just sort of sitting around and wondering, and started obviously playing some music, and then this offer came in. Would I, like to try? Would I like to do some gigs in Germany? They'd be small, but it was just me and the guitars. I thought, well, why not? So I did. I moved over and started playing, and I have to say, my own, kind of uh, way, that I went down to bomb. It really did take off. I thought, blimey, this is good. It's not because the Germans didn't understand the text. I was singing mostly songs that everybody knew. Well,
Yeah.
obviously, I'd play some of my own songs, but mostly songs everybody knew, and they're all tapping their feet and clapping their hands. And, and the people that were responsible for the gig were all smiling, and I got return gigs, and that's how that sort of kind of took off, really. Very, very great time for me.
Yeah. Well, Paul joined you there, what, a few years later? He came.
Yes, he did. I thought that Travis and Davis could, reunite. But Paul Travis and Sandy Davis could reunite as a band, Travis and Davis, or Davis and Travis, whatever. And he came over, and I had a studio in my basement, and we did some recordings together. We had some absolutely wonderful nights. We'd go to the local pub, because it was in the village. Go to the local pub, and that. Did you see a musician walk past a pub? One of those. And then after that, we weren't sort of drunk, or just a little bit sort of kind of into it. We'd go downstairs in my studio and have headphones on and microphone, and then just play. Anything occur to you? Yeah, well, what about this? Oh, that's good. And so we wrote some good stuff, demoed it, and got this deal with Dino Records for this track. I can't remember the title of it now. Typical Sandy, but memory like a sieve. But it was really, really a lot of fun to work with Paul. But I could see that his decision to leave the UK in the late 70s, it was about Headwaiter time for me, was, he showed me the contract, and he went to LA to work this new album for the band that he was in, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. So it kind of really, really upset him very deeply. And when he came over to Germany, I don't think he could spring out of it. It was kind of not sad, but you get the feeling, and it's kind of as if you've got "I wish I was here," written on your forehead. You know what I mean? A little bit like that. But we worked hard, and we had some great times, some good laughs, and some nice successes, I must say. It was good. But he eventually left in '92 and went back to Manchester. So.
Yeah. Well, while you were there, you did some writing, recording, and some session work also. In particular, Boney M. You worked with that band.
Yeah, it was a few years before Paul came over. Actually, just putting it the date in order, Paul came over in 1987. And I started to work with Frank Farrier in 1983, 84. Somebody had, you know how it is, have you met Sandy's English? Oh, English. Oh, get back, you can help me with some lyrics, which is what I did, And of course, I still get royalties today from that. And he agreed. We were just chatting, and he agreed through his massive success with Boney M that I could get some time in his studio, So I did some work there in Rosbach, which is north of Frankfurt. And he had quite a big recording studio in his private house, which just happened to be a few miles down the road from where I was living. So, and I'd go over there and do some oohs and ahs for him, I'd go over there with my dog, and Bobby would lie on the carpet and look, as a Labrador does, when he's kind of, and I'd do the oohs and ahs with Frank, he was very happy about that. So that turned out to be very successful, maybe not #1 hits, but it was a good relationship, and he was a nice bloke. He still is a nice bloke. Lives in Florida, I think now.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah. And anyway, he did have this massive studio in Rosbach near Frankfurt, and I met a lot of musicians there. And it was just simply great, just to get over that one, oh, you're English, oh, you're English. Yes, I am. Can we get on with, and so on. It was great. I have to say the people were really, really friendly, it was a great time.
Yeah. Well, moving ahead a little bit to your third solo album, 1996 Guest Book.
Yes.
A couple of tracks I want to mention on there that I really, really like. I'll Be There and One More Lonely Heart. Those are my two picks off of that.
Well, they happen to be my favorite too as well. I'll Be There I wrote earlier, not that year. So this would be 1996, around about there. I'd written it in the middle of the 80s. I think there is a recording of it at Frank Farrien's studio, not at the studio. I think I've got the rough mixes here somewhere. And I always really liked that song because it was to the point. It was something that I really, really liked. And what was the other one again? You said
One More Lonely Heart. One
More Lonely Heart. Yes, the usual love story one, but that was a personal one. I've been yes. Well, anyway, won't go into details there, but it does inspire, and I really like that song. I still do. In fact, I'm doing a kind of a new demo version. We'll see. These days, demos almost sound like masters. It depends on who's sort of organizing it. If a professional is there, he can make from demo material. Everybody's got a computer. He can make a master. So we're kind of working on that. I really, really love that song. Inspired, truly personally inspired.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm over it now.
Yeah, perhaps a little too personal.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
you moved back to the UK in 2012, right?
I did indeed, yes.
Okay. And then what did you start doing? What did you start getting involved in when you moved back?
Well, I think probably, to use part of your words and part of mine, I kind of got involved with doing nothing. Okay. It was difficult at first, because you're once an artist, you're always an artist, whether it be poetry or music or whatever. If you're in that band, and other things too, but musicians don't give up their passions like that. but I haven't really sort of been inspired to do that much. It's not any other reason apart from the fact that I'm going to enjoy my life. I mean, I won't live forever. I mean, I can see my reflection and I think, well, yes, it's pretty good, for 65, you're not doing too bad, son. But enjoy it, and that's what I'm doing. I write the occasional song, but maybe put it on tape, but I'm pretty happy with how it's gone.
with yeah, where you come from, where you've gone, and what's happening these days. Well,
Yes.
I want curious about who are the Dead Sea Squirrels?
Dead Sea Squirrels are me and Martin Briley. Now, Martin Briley goes back, we go back to 1972 or something, when I had a studio down in Surrey, yes, and Martin came to do the guitar parts because I'd heard it was really good, and indeed he's really, really good. He's really good now, and that's how we met. And we telephone every week. He lives in New York, and we just decided, to do the song. He said, "I'd really like to, to do this song. And what do you think about a name?" And I said, "Well, I don't know really. Any ideas?" And he said, "Well, what about the Dead Sea Squirrels?" I thought it was quite funny, actually. Don't you mean Dead Sea Scrolls? Well, I do, but we're entitled to change a little bit now and again. Yeah, so that's how that happened. It was last year, I think.
Okay.
And I'm very happy with the result. And Martin is such a great guy. He's a really talented TV music writer. He writes music for TV, like Hans Zimmer, not as famous as Hans Zimmer, but Martin Briley had a big hit in the 80s called "You Ain't Worth the Salt in My Tears," and which kind of, obviously established him. And we get along great, and that's how that happened. And we needed a B-side, so we did a B-side. Yeah,
It's been fun working with him on that. Well,
totally.
then last year, you mentioned last year, you also put out the singles and masters. What kind of reaction have you received from that?
Well, we're getting there. As I said at the beginning, this really nice guy, Joe Smith. Don't be fooled by the name. He's a really, really talented bloke. And it just, we just got to know each other like you and I right now. We did an interview and we were just chatting. And then he said, I'm not sure if he said anything, actually. He just started working on a kind of website, and that's how it all started. I thought, well, this is brilliant, and he's done such a lot of good work and he's very inspirational, he makes these suggestions, and this past masters and future masters, however it's called, is basically his work. He takes credit for that. I mean, I wrote the songs, but he put them together. I'm still working on it. I've got a couple of things to organize for him, but he's got these days you have a digital AI. The Beatles' next and very last single will be made, because you can separate tracks. Once, in the old days, you'd mix, I don't know how many tracks, you mix them all to stereo. And if you didn't have the 16 track, well, that's it, it's done. That's all you can do. And with AI, you can separate the tracks even now, so he's been doing that, and he's working new vocal lines in there and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and doing a grand job. He's not finished, but I'm wondering what we're going to do next, because I don't want to lose him as a friend. I know I won't, but he gives me some inspiration, a lot, in fact.
Oh, well, that's great. That's great to hear that.
Yeah. And I gave you the internet address, didn't I?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
.co.uk, my name. www, Daily Easy, and he's done loads of stuff. He did it all himself. I mean, I gave him all the materials, of course, but what a nice guy and very, very talented.
Yeah. Well, speaking of working with him, are there any other artists that you've worked with over the years that you might want to mention that you've enjoyed working with?
Well, there's been many. I think Martin Briley being one of them, although he moved to the States in the late 70s. It's a hard question to answer because I've been involved with so many people, over the years. I think I enjoyed working with the musicians on Back on My Feet Again, that LP. I really did, and we all worked so hard. And they were also brilliant what they played. You didn't have to tell them much, just play it this way. How about this? Oh, super. Those musicians I'd really like to say hi to. And I must say I'm so happy. I'm so happy. I'm very satisfied.
Right.
I'm not sitting there going, oh, damn. I wish I'm very, very happy with the way things worked out. And, it can always work out a different way. It depends on luck, on, you know how it is. But my story has been quite colorful and I'm very happy about it.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Definitely. You've enjoyed it, the ride, right?
Yes, I've enjoyed the ride, made the most of it, what
Yeah.
I could do, there are always things in retrospect you can look back and say, I could have done that a bit better, I guess, or maybe had I done that, it might have turned out that, but that's all stuff from the past, which can upset. I think it's better to be practical in many ways and say, okay, I did what I did at the time and so on. I don't need to tell you that, but I think it makes me happier to sit back and say, yeah, it was a cool run. I enjoyed it, which I did.
All right. Well, I'm glad we had this opportunity to chat, Sandy.
Yeah.
Any last, would you like to plug anything and put in a word for anybody or mention anything in closing?
No, not really. It's nice to get to know you, and thank you for the invitation for this interview. It's certainly taken me back, and that's always for me. It's a good thing to remember this, that, and so on. So I thank you for that, and I hope that that we'll stay in touch somehow.
Oh, yeah.
I'd gladly do another interview for you. Whenever the time crops up again, we can perhaps use another angle or go to a different place or whatever. But it's nice to have got to know you, and thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, Sandy, and thanks for sharing so much, jarring that memory a little bit.
Exactly.
Right. All right. Well, I will. Once I get this edited down a little bit, probably won't be much. I'll send you over the link, and then you can post it on your social and let everybody know.
Okay. And with this video, do you put it on your?
It will be on YouTube on my channel.
Yeah. Would you give me the address when you post it?
Yes, I will send you the link, the actual link to it.
Super.
Yeah, and then you can share it with other people and see what kind of reaction and responses we get.
Yeah.
That's what I enjoy about doing this is the comment. I enjoy that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sandy, and we will keep in touch. And you have a good rest of the weekend. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Greg, and you too. Hope to see you soon. Yeah.